Hi guys, today I'll be taking a look at a switch from Keychron, the Keychron K Pro Brown. Let's get started. Now, the K Pro Brown is part of Keychron's Pro lineup, which includes 7 switches in total. These switches feature dust proofing on the stem and are factory lubed, apart from the blue clicky switch. Now, pricing wise, these are $6 for 45 switches on Keychron's website, placing these in the ultra budget range. And this is what they look like when disassembled. Feel free to pause the video. Now, let's move on to the switch characteristics. On-center key presses are extremely smooth with zero scratchiness or binding. Off-center key presses are incredibly smooth with only minor scratchiness at very slow key presses. Overall, it surprised me just how smooth these are, and that makes them an easy recommendation. 8 out of 10. Now, according to Keychron, these switches have an actuation force of 50 grams at 2mm and a total travel of 4mm. Now, as you can see from this force curve I recorded, the Keychron K Pro Brown were within its outline specs. Just. Additionally, they were extremely consistent. As you can see, switch 1 and 3 were essentially matching, which is very impressive, although switch 2 isn't too far behind either. However, one thing to note, switch 2 has a slight downward spike around 0.9mm during the start of its tactile event, but this couldn't be felt when actually using the switch. Now, here's a force curve comparison against the Cherry MX Brown. The Cherry switch is slightly heavier by around 7 to 10 grams, but this is hardly noticeable in the real world. Now, here it is against the Acco POM Brown. They're both very similar in weighting as well as tactility, although the Acco switch has a slightly stronger and sharper bump, which again isn't really noticeable in the real world. Overall, it's a lightly weighted switch with a very consistent performance. It's too light for me, but it is a great switch for beginners or as an upgrade from the Cherry MX Brown. 5 out of 10. Now, if you listen closely, you'll hear some spring crunch and spring ping, but they aren't distracting to me. Overall, they have some clack, but otherwise are very average. 5 out of 10. Now, take a listen and enjoy. Now, I was never a fan of the Cherry MX Brown, and that goes for many of you as well. However, this switch is somewhat of an MX Brown clone, so I ended up not really liking it. Now, for me, its light tactility and weighting threw me off, causing me plenty of typos throughout my testing, which obviously isn't ideal. However, their consistency was absolutely top notch. I dare say it's better than Acco's, but this is the first Keychron switch I've tested, so they have a lot more to prove, but this sets a very good first impression. Overall, consistency aside, they're pretty much the improved version of the Cherry MX Brown, but they aren't for me. 5 out of 10. Now, their tactility was more present in gaming. Although this was only the case for slower paced games, in most cases the tactility was non-existent, so it was practically useless. However, I do think it's again worth pointing out these performed very consistently. They didn't suffer from any scratchiness or binding. Overall, this isn't for me given its light weighting, but I can see them being a good starter switch. 6 out of 10. In conclusion, if we're just looking at price, this is a really good value. I mean, it's 13 cents per switch, but obviously they aren't the best out there. The final score for this switch is 29 out of 50 or 58%, which is in line with other MX Brown clones. And that's it. Next time I'll be taking a look at another tactile switch. Anyway, until then, take care and goodbye.